My study is to examine how the Youth Olympic Games use Twitter to promote their events using social network analysis. So as you may know, the social media platforms are crucial sites for communications. So in today's society, the sports scholars are increasingly studying the various laws of social media. Okay. So within the both for the profit and non-profit organization, there has been emphasis placed on the significant influence of social media use on target audiences engagement. In particular, the non-profit support organizations have received very little coverage through the traditional media outlets because of the smaller marketing budgets. So, social media use has been considered as an innovative and cost-effective means to raise the awareness of the events and engage fans and stakeholders around the world. Okay, please let me explain more about the Youth Olympic Games. So with vision, the Games would inspire young people around the world to participate in sports and deliver the message of the Olympic movement around them. The Youth Olympic Games were held in 2010 in Singapore, in 2012 in Seoul, and 2014 in Nanjing, and the next 2016 Olympics just start tomorrow. So that's why Dr. Peterson and I will attend the Youth Olympic Symposium in Norway next week. So the media plays an important role in promoting visions among young athletes and also help spectators around the world become more interested in new sports and physical activities. Compared to the Olympic Games, the Youth Olympic Games have received less sponsor and less media attention. So as a result of the slight operating budget through media, broadcast, and sports slides, a lack of marketing and promotion has increased an extremely low level of public awareness regarding the Youth Olympic Games. So, for Youth Olympic Games, the social media function as a more ideal means of increasing awareness. Okay, so that's why the Youth Olympic must attempt to use social media to attract the audience to the events. For the success of the future Youth Olympic Games, more research about the effect of social media use on public awareness and strategic messaging should be conducted. So for this purpose, the assessment of social media was considered an important step to understand more effective social media and also effective social media strategy with clear goals. Now, I considered one of the social cues user mention for my study. Because using user mention, the organization can communicate with other users. More specifically, sports organization can direct the messages to a specific user. As a result of that, a dialogue is established between users and the organizations. As users connect to each other using user mention, they form a smaller social network within the larger Twitter environment because the users join together to discuss the events and also their interests. So the social network methodology applies to examine the creation of the Twitter communication network of the sport organization and user mentioned by them. More specifically, this study is to observe which individual exists as network members within the Youth Olympic Games and Olympic Games network. And also to analyze the network structure because it is related to the main user who engages with the Youth Olympic Games and Olympic Games as to understand how they are using Twitter to promote their events. And also map the network members and their relationship using user mentions. So I have 5 research questions. So I'm going to address them later. So for my study, I used the Python programming language to collect reliable data for the total number of tweets and also all of the users located with collected tweets associated with the Youth Olympic Games and the Olympic Games. More specifically, the target data are for the Youth Olympic Games are the Youth Olympic Games and also Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympic Games. And the target data for the recent Olympic Games are the at Olympics and at Sochi 2014. And in order to identify change in interaction over time, the data were divided into 3 time frames, before, during, and after. So before the games data are data published for 6 months before the start of the games, and during the games, and after the games are the data published for 6 months after the games were over. So in order to determine if there is an identifiable network in the observable subset of Twitter users for the Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympics and the Sochi 2014 Olympics, the relationship between the original users and user mentions were captured and analyzed. So with the collect data, I create the adjacency matrix using Python programming language. And I use UCINet and NetDraw to analyze the network data and also visually depict the Twitter-based interactions. Okay. If you look at this table shows the number of tweets. Interestingly, even though the total number of tweets published by the Youth Olympic Games and Olympic Games are not that different, the number of the tweets published across the 3 time frames are quite different. For example, the Youth Olympic Games published 416 tweets during the game, but after the game, they were less likely to publish tweets right after the game. But on the other hand, in the case of the Olympic Games, they published more tweets before the start of the games and then consistently published tweets after the game. The number of retweeted messages. So Youth Olympic Game forwarded about 35% of the tweets that were originally posted by other organizations. Especially during the games, if you see the number of 255, that means Youth Olympic rely more on the message published by other organizations. But the Olympic game, just 4.6%, that means they tended to create and share their own messages with audiences. Especially during the game, not really. Okay, if you look at this table, we can see the original user name and the number of tweets. So, for example, as predicted, the Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympic posted most of the tweets, 648, and they retweeted some messages, 73 messages from the Youth Olympic Games. Olympic Games retweeted the 13 messages from the Youth Olympic Games to promote the new global sport event. So these top 5 users are here. Yeah, more information. So most of the users who interact with the Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympics and 2014 Sochi Olympics are official global or national sport organizations. But only 2 users are individual users, but they have a huge number of followers because the guy is the president and the lady is the Olympian. So using the followers, their followers, the Youth Olympic tended to promote their events more effectively, and also Olympic Games as well. So if you look at this table, you can see the user mention and frequency of the mention in tweets. Okay, let's look at the Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympic Games. So Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympic Games mentioned Youth Olympics 358 times. And also Olympic Games mentioned the Youth Olympic Games and also Nanjing 2014 Olympic Games more frequently compared to other users. And also, the only one individual user but has a huge number of followers. Okay, last table. So, interesting finding from this table is that after the game, Youth Olympic Games were less likely to mention other users, but the Olympic Games were more likely to interact with other users. Could you please turn up the light? Maybe it's not clear, but it's interesting result. So, could you turn up the light? No? Oh, 1 minute. All right. Okay. So, you're right. That's good. Perfect. So, I don't know. You can see the difference between these 2 organizations' networks. So, Youth Olympic Games networks, some nodes and ties are scattered. On the other hand, the Sochi 2014 Olympic Games net users are located at the center of the networks and well connected with each other nodes. More specifically, I want to show you the Youth Olympic Games network across the 3 time frames. The first row is Youth Olympics and the Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympic Games, and before, during, and after. Compared to the networks before and after the games, so we can find the Youth Olympic and Nanjing 2014 Youth Olympic Games were more likely to interact with other users. However, after the games, only few nodes and ties exist in the networks. Okay. On the other hand, Olympic Games networks across the 3 time frames, quite different result. So compared to the network before and after the games, the lower level of interaction during the games. My assumption here is that they already have a strong fan base. All right. So I want to show you the comparison between the Youth Olympic Game network and Olympic networks before the games. So before the games, some nodes and ties are scattered, right? But for the Olympic Games, well connected to each other nodes. I think one of the most interesting findings is these figures, these networks. Because even though Youth Olympic Game has high level of interaction with, not high level, so has interact with other users more effectively, more actively during the games, but they are not connected to each other, interestingly. But even though, but the Olympic Games, not many interaction, but they are really connected to each other very well. But after the games, just few ties and nodes, not really interact with other users for the case of the Youth Olympic Games. But Olympic Games, they were more likely to interact with other users after the games. So there are 4 findings for this study. So the user who had a interaction with Youth Olympic Games and the Olympic Games are official global all-national sport organizations that already have tons of followers. And through the result of the visualization, it was found that the Olympic Games centralized network resembles stars, but the Youth Olympic Games or networks are sparse, including isolated nodes and ties. Right. For the Youth Olympic Game, during the Youth Olympic Game, they rely more on messages published by other organization pages. And after the game, it was interesting. They didn't really fully use the communication tools available to them through the Twitter. So my suggestion here is that for a strong fan base, the Youth Olympic Games need to improve the exchange information through the promotion of the more conversation and collaborations.